Most people hear the word drugs and immediately imagine the same images: a back alley, a broken needle, an addict shaking in the shadows. But that's only one story, and it's the story we've been told. The other story, the older one, is almost forgotten. For thousands of years, across continents and cultures, human beings used these same substances for something very different. Not for escape, not for destruction, but for contact with something greater, for healing, for vision, for transcendence. The irony is unsettling. What modern society condemns as poison, ancient civilizations once revered as a portal. And so we are faced with a paradox. Were these substances simply dangerous drugs? Or were they sacred tools, keys that unlocked the hidden architecture of the mind? The answer depends on how deeply we're willing to look. Long before the word drug even existed, plants and brews were woven into the fabric of ritual and religion. Take the Rig Veda, one of the oldest sacred texts of India. It speaks of soma, a mysterious drink prepared from a now-lost plant. Soma was no ordinary refreshment. It was described as the drink of the gods, a nectar of immortality. Warriors drank it before battle. Priests drank it during sacrifice. And poets claimed it gave them visions of the divine. The exact identity of soma has been lost to time, perhaps a psychedelic mushroom, perhaps something else, but its reputation remains, a drink that dissolved the ordinary boundaries of perception, now crossed the world to ancient Greece. For nearly 2,000 years, the greatest minds of the classical world, philosophers, poets, even emperors, participated in secret ceremonies known as the Eleusinian Mysteries. There, initiates drank a potion called kaikian. What exactly was in it? Scholars argue it may have contained ergot, a fungus with psychedelic properties, related to the chemical that would later become LSD. And what happened after drinking? Initiates reported visions so powerful, so transformative, that they described them as revelations of immortality. Plato himself hinted that his philosophy was shaped by what he experienced at Eleusis. The mysteries were so profound that, even under penalty of death, participants were forbidden from revealing the details. And then there is the Amazon. For centuries, and still today, shamans brew a thick, bitter tea from a vine called ayahuasca. Translated, it means the vine of souls. Those who drink it describe journeys through vivid landscapes, encounters with spirits, conversations with ancestors, even death and rebirth. To the tribes of the Amazon, this is not fantasy. It is medicine. It is communion. From the deserts of Africa, where the Buti use iboga to initiate contact with ancestors, to the frozen north, where Siberian shamans ate the bright red fly agaric mushroom, believing it gave them power to ride between worlds. We see the same pattern. The substances that today we call drugs were not recreational playthings. They were sacraments, tools for navigating the mystery of existence. What makes this even stranger is the figure who guided these journeys, the shaman. To Western medicine, a shaman is dismissed as a primitive healer, a relic of superstition. But to their communities, the shaman was the most important figure. He was not a priest in the sense of preaching. He was a traveler, a guide between worlds. When the shaman ingested a plant and entered a vision, It wasn't considered madness. It was his duty. He carried questions into the invisible realm and returned with answers: how to heal the sick, when to hunt, where to find water. The Western mind insists that these were hallucinations, dreams, chemical tricks of the brain. But here lies the disturbing mystery. Why do people who take these substances separated by geography, language, and culture so often report the same visions, the same beings, the same patterns? The jaguar of the Amazon, the serpent of ayahuasca, the spirals of geometric light. Carl Jung once suggested that beneath individual minds lies a collective unconscious, a vast ocean of symbols, archetypes, and stories that we all share. Could it be that psychedelics do not create hallucinations, but rather peel back the veil, exposing us to this deeper layer of reality? To the shaman, this was never a question. He already knew. For most of history, the West rejected these practices, until in the mid-20th century, science stumbled onto the same path. In 1943, Swiss chemist Albert Hofmann accidentally ingested a tiny dose of a new compound he had synthesized: lysergic acid diethylamide, LSD. What followed was the first acid trip in history. Colors bled, shapes shifted, time dissolved. Hofmann realized he had discovered something extraordinary, a molecule capable of profoundly altering consciousness. By the 1950s and 60s, psychedelics were being studied seriously in psychiatry. Psilocybin showed promise in easing existential anxiety in cancer patients. Some even speculated these substances might unlock creativity and expand human potential. Fast forward to the present, and neuroscience offers clues. In the brain, one of the key networks is called the default mode network. It is the system that maintains our sense of self, our inner narrator, our ego. Under psychedelics, this network goes silent. And when it does, the boundaries of me begin to dissolve. Researchers found LSD could treat alcoholism. Participants describe emerging with everything, an overwhelming sense of unity, of oneness. Johns Hopkins University has even measured this. People given psilocybin often rank the experience as one of the most meaningful events of their entire lives, comparable to the birth of a child or the death of a parent. This is not mere intoxication. This is the dissolution of ordinary reality into something much stranger, much harder to explain. If consciousness is just the firing of neurons, then why does disrupting the brain's normal order so often reveal experiences of insight, of clarity, of contact with something more? Science is catching up with what shamans always knew. These substances are not simply poisons. They are technologies of the soul. But just as the West rediscovered this ancient knowledge, it was buried again. In the 1960s, psychedelics leapt from the laboratory into the culture. Timothy Leary, once a Harvard psychologist, began preaching the gospel of LSD. Turn on, tune in, drop out. Hippies rejected the war in Vietnam, challenged consumer culture, and sought freedom in altered states of consciousness. To the establishment, this was chaos, a generation refusing to obey, and so came the crackdown. In 1970, The United States passed the Controlled Substances Act, making LSD, psilocybin, and other psychedelics illegal. Research was halted. Funding evaporated. Scientists were silenced. The official story was about public health. The unofficial reality was about control. Psychedelics didn't just make people high. They made them question authority. They revealed that the rigid systems of politics, religion, and economics were not eternal truths, but fragile constructions. What better way to maintain control than to declare war? And so the war on drugs began. But perhaps it was never a war on chemicals. Perhaps it was a war on consciousness itself. But doorways once discovered are not so easily forgotten. Underground, seekers continued. Shamans kept brewing ayahuasca in the jungle. Psychonauts continued to explore with LSD and mushrooms. And slowly, after decades of silence, the mainstream is beginning to return. Today, psychedelic therapy is making headlines. Microdosing spreads through Silicon Valley. Ayahuasca retreats draw travelers from across the globe. What was once forbidden is being reborn, though often stripped of its sacred context. Are we rediscovering something new? Or are we simply returning to what humanity always knew, that these plants and substances are mirrors, showing us hidden dimensions of ourselves and of reality? Outro. So where does that leave us? Perhaps drugs are not good or evil. Perhaps they are mirrors. In them, some see gods, others see madness. Some find healing, others find ruin. But one thing is undeniable: they reveal that consciousness itself is far stranger, far deeper than our ordinary minds allow us to believe. And maybe this is why they frighten the powers that be. Because to glimpse the truth that reality is not fixed, that the self is not solid, that the world could be otherwise, is to slip the chains that hold us. So we return to the question with which we began. Were these substances poisons or portals? Perhaps the answer depends not on the drug itself, but on the courage of the one who dares to take the journey.